unusual and risky trip at this time to meet with the Supreme Leader?
Well, I'll let Mr. Putin speak for why he decided to go at this particular time, but I would say three things about this trip. One, it shows the degree to which Mr. Putin and Russia are increasingly isolated. Now they have to turn to Iran for help. Two, it shows the degree to which his own defense industrial base is having a hard time keeping up with his unprovoked war in Ukraine. We already know that in respect to precision-guided munitions and advanced systems, like tanks, even aircraft, he's having trouble, particularly with the microelectronics because of the sanctions and export controls. And we already know that even without that, his defense industrial base is challenged because of the rate of operation, the pace of operations in Ukraine. And then the third thing I think this indicates is the degree to which he has absolutely no intention of stopping the war and sitting down in good faith and negotiated settlement with Mr. Zelensky. He has every intention, quite the contrary, because now he wants to go buy several hundred UAVs to continue to prosecute this illegal war and to continue to kill Ukrainians.
Oh, and what does the U.S. know about the meeting that President Putin had in Iran with Turkish leader Erdogan and what it could mean for reinstating Ukrainian grain exports?
I'll let them speak to their meetings. I don't know what was on the agenda for that. We are mindful of the talks that have been ongoing between Turkey, Russia, and Ukraine about grain exports. And we hope for progress in those talks. But we're clear-eyed about it. We're clear-eyed about Russia's ambitions here. We're clear-eyed about the fact that there's basically a blockade in the Black Sea. So while we certainly welcome Mr. Erdogan's leadership in here, and the president has thanked him for that leadership, with trying to come up with a negotiated solution here to get the grain out. It's unfortunate that he even has to have those talks, because there's a blockade that Russia could stop today. They could take their ships out of the Black Sea, they could let that grain go, and alleviate a lot of food security problems, not just in Europe, but in the Middle East and Africa or elsewhere around the world. So again, we're hopeful that there can be some sort of arrangement to get that grain out of there. But we're not looking at it through rose-colored glasses in terms of the success that they'll ultimately be able to achieve. The only thing I'd add to that is it's good to see Ukraine at the table in these discussions, and that's as it should be. Ukraine absolutely has to be part of whatever solution is solved, and their economy can't suffer any more than it already has as a result of Russian blockade activity.
Let's go to that Jenny, Phil. Thank you. Yeah, thank
Jenny,
you.
let me get my pen. I dropped it, because often when you ask me questions,
Yeah.
I have to write them down. Go ahead.
Don't be nervous.
Oh, no. I am always nervous when you're called.
Thank you, John. I have two questions on one Ukraine and one Russia. The Ukraine recently announced that diplomatic
Decisions he may or may not make, but the president believes that this is a very important issue for our own national security, and we're gonna treat it that way.
Back to Iran and Russia, and if I may, a quick one on the executive order from today. Jake Sullivan had said last week that Iran was preparing to train Russian forces to use armed drones in Ukraine starting this month. Does the U.S. have an indication that those training sessions have started, or that Iran has actually given those drones to Russia?
We don't have any indications that the sale has actually occurred, and so therefore we wouldn't have any indications that there's been training done on them. And I don't want us to get lost in the details here. I mean, I know it's important. Obviously, we wouldn't have talked about it if it wasn't. But it is an indication of how much more desperate Mr. Putin's becoming in terms of his own. his own defense industrial base and the degree to which he wants to continue to prosecute this war. Now, a lot of it's going to depend on how many does he buy, what kind of capabilities they have, but the Iranians have a domestic production capability of drones, and those drones have lethal capabilities. We've seen that for ourselves in the attacks that they have perpetrated in Iraq and in Syria against our own troops and against our own facilities there. So we're watching this closely, and we're taking it seriously.
And on the executive order from today, how quickly might we see sanctions on people or countries that the U.S. considers responsible for detaining Americans wrongfully right now? And how might this impact or play into the cases of Brittany Griner or Paul Whelan?
I don't want to get ahead of any decision space here. That's not my role today. These are additional tools that the CEO gives us, including the ability to levy additional sanctions. So, again, I'm not going to preview anything or get ahead. Last thing I'd say on this is that the President